This winter, I've got to be honest with you. It feels different. I've been staring at the charts, the sea surface temperatures, the long-range model runs, and what I'm seeing is a tug of war so intense, so uncertain, that it almost feels like the atmosphere is writing a thriller novel and we're just waiting to see the next chapter unfold. All around the globe, the weather machine is shifting. The Pacific is whispering one thing, the Arctic is screaming another, and the US is right in the middle of this clash. We're not just looking at a simple forecast here. This is a story of battles, of pushes and pulls, of instability that could send waves of chaos across the country. On one side, we've got a weak La Niña, barely hanging on, like a flickering candle in the Pacific. It's not strong enough to dominate, but it's also not gone. And then up above, 60,000 feet over the North Pole, there's the wild card, the polar vortex. And let me tell you, this thing is wobbling. It's unstable. If it tips over, if it weakens, we're not just talking about chilly mornings. We're talking about Arctic air blasting south with a vengeance. Air that doesn't just sting your face, it takes your breath away. That's the knife's edge we're on right now. A winter that could split America in two. For some of you, this is going to be the winter of relentless snow. Week after week of cold that bites into your bones. For others, it's going to be the exact opposite. Mild, dry, frustratingly boring, with drought creeping back into the headlines. The models are painting a country divided, a line drawn, right across the middle of the United States. North of that line, it's cold, it's stormy, it's snow piled up like we haven't seen in years. South of that line, the warmth wins, the rain dries up, and fire danger climbs. But here's where it gets wild. Even with all the uncertainty in the Pacific, even with La Niña acting more like a pebble than a boulder, the big supercomputer models, the American, the European, even the Canadian, they're all agreeing. And when all three of these models line up, you've got to sit up straight. They're showing a winter of two halves, a split right down the middle. Now let me take you inside what that means. If you're in the southern tier, from California to the Carolinas, you're staring at a warmer, drier winter. I'm talking 2, 3, maybe even 4 degrees above normal. Rainfall cut down by 20 to 40%. For the Southwest, that means drought conditions worsening. For the Southeast, your heating bills might stay low. But don't get too comfortable. Severe weather outbreaks could still pop up when that warm Gulf air slams into cold intrusions from the north. But if you're up north, buckle up. The northern tier is primed for battle. The models are pointing toward colder, wetter conditions. Frequent Arctic invasions, storm tracks lined up to deliver blow after blow. And where those two worlds collide, the warm south and the frigid north, that's the battleground. That's where we're going to see the most dramatic storms. Heavy snow, ice storms, even severe weather in the dead of winter. That clash zone is going to be ground zero for chaos this season. And then there's the monster in the room, the polar vortex. You've heard about it on the news. You've probably seen the scary headlines. But let me break it down. Think of the polar vortex as a giant spinning top of Arctic air locked up over the pole. When it's stable, when it's spinning tight, that air stays bottled up. But when it weakens, when it wobbles, when it cracks apart, that freezer door gets flung wide open and the cold spills south. And folks, this winter the setup is ripe for those disruptions. We're talking a 60 to 75% chance of one of those major events. If that happens, we could be staring at cold snaps so brutal that wind chills dip to -30, -40, even -50 in some spots. And these aren't overnight events. These disruptions can linger for weeks, reshaping the entire season. Based on the signals I'm seeing, I think we'll get 2, maybe 3 major polar vortex events this year. And if history tells us anything, those are the moments that define a winter. Those are the stories people tell 10, 20 years later. The blizzard where cars wouldn't start. The cold wave that shut schools down for a week. The storm that people still talk about decades later. Let's zoom in. Pacific Northwest. You guys are in for a stormy ride. Seattle, Portland, the Cascades. Storm track enhancement is locked in on you. Cooler than normal temps. More snow. More atmospheric rivers. Skiers are going to love this. Water managers are going to breathe easier. But for day-to-day life, it's going to be a mess. Now over to the Great Lakes. Chicago, Buffalo, Detroit. This is your year. You're in the front row for Arctic intrusions, and with lake waters running warmer, that means one thing: insane lake effect snow. I'm talking about snow bands dropping 2 to 3 feet in a matter of hours. On top of that, Alberta clippers are making a comeback. They're fast, they're frequent, and while each one only brings a few inches, they add up fast. Meanwhile, the Southwest, Phoenix, Vegas, LA. I wish I had better news. But it's rough. The models are clear, hotter than normal, drier than normal, worsening drought, and fire season risks climbing high. The Midwest and Ohio Valley? You're sitting in the bullseye. St. Louis, Indy, Columbus. You're the storm track's playground. This is where ice storms become a real threat, where severe weather in December and January is not out of the question. One day you're in a hoodie. The next you're buried in snow. The whiplash is going to be real. And then the Northeast, Philly, New York, Boston, up into Maine. I'm expecting 6 to 9 major nor'easters this season. That's bold, but the signs are there. Early winter may fool you. It could be mild, maybe even quiet. But by February into March, all bets are off. Negative NAO blocking patterns line up perfectly for slow-moving, intensifying coastal storms. If you live up here, don't let your guard down early. The back half of winter could be explosive. The southeast, meanwhile, stays warm and relatively dry. Atlanta down to Florida, your winter may feel uneventful, maybe even boring. But again, when that warm air mixes with the right setup, tornado outbreaks are very much on the table. You might not remember the winter for cold, but you could remember it for severe weather. Late October into November, that's when this whole setup starts flexing its muscles. Cooler than normal air begins dominating the east. Gulf states start trending below average. And here's the kicker. It doesn't look like a quick in and out. The signals say it lingers. That's always my red flag moment. When I see a pattern lock in, it tells me we're not just talking about a few chilly mornings. We're talking about the groundwork being laid for a season-shaping pattern. And then comes December. That's when the models really start cranking. A positive PNA begins to emerge. That's meteorologists speak for ridging out west and deep troughing over the central and eastern U.S. translation. Arctic air funneling southward. Think about it. A warm bubble over Canada, forcing the jet stream to dive like a roller coaster into the heart of the U.S. That's when you get those cross-polar flows, those straight shots of Siberian air barreling into the Midwest and East Coast. If you've been waiting for the kind of winter that bites, this is where my eyes light up. Now, it's not all one-way traffic. The models tease a little thaw in January, a quick breather, a little warmth sneaking back in. But then February? Oh man, February looks like it could hit hard. Cold, entrenched in the east. Warmth, trying to build in the west. A tug of war that screams snowstorms, ice events, and all the chaos winter lovers live for. And just to make things even more interesting, when we roll into March, it looks like the pattern pulls a fast one. Just like last year, the atmosphere seems to want to flip the switch back to warmth, right as we approach spring. Almost like winter shows up late, makes its presence known, and then slips out the back door once the calendar says it's time. Now, I'll say this. Precipitation is always trickier to nail down than temperatures. Models can get sloppy with the rain and snow signals, but the general idea is there. The southeast and parts of the east could be drier than normal, which is not what you want if you're already dealing with drought. The northwest? Wetter than average. The Midwest and Northeast? Some wetter windows that line up with those cold patterns. So here's the bottom line. The building blocks for this fall and winter are on the table right now. Weak La Nina, warm Atlantic waters, blocking potential, a positive PNA down the line. Everything is there for a winter that could get very interesting, very fast. And listen, I'll keep updating you as we go, because these long-range outlooks are like snapshots. Every few weeks, the picture sharpens, the details come into focus, and sometimes things flip on their head. That's the beauty and the frustration of seasonal forecasting. But one thing's for sure, this is shaping up to be a ride you'll want to stick around for. So if you're as fascinated by this as I am, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that bell icon, because I'll be breaking this down day by day, week by week, all the way through the season. Drop a comment, tell me where you're watching from and what kind of winter you're hoping for. And trust me, this story is just getting started.